Hello and welcome to another edition of the Fabulous Woman podcast. This time round, it's the incredibly talented Dr. Lizzie Bernthal, a woman whose stories of her challenging 25-year-long military career being deployed to war zones might well leave you with a few goosebumps. So let's go. Hello, you're back. Thank you. I'm Marvarine Cole, your hostess with the mostess on this groovy little journey about the lives of fabulous women who've been brave enough to tell me their stories. Lizzie Bernthal is my fabulous woman today. She wears many hats. She's had a fascinating career as a healthcare professional in the army, working in Afghanistan and Pakistan. She's also an academic with a PhD, brainy thing, and she's now using what she's learned in life to help others propel theirs forward with her own business as a resilience specialist. So hold on to your hats with some of these stories you're going to hear. Sit back, relax, listen and learn as I reveal Dr. Lizzie Bernthal, fabulous woman. Lizzie, it's lovely to have you on the Fabulous Woman podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Let's start with who you are and what you do right now.
I've done all sorts of roles. I'm a nurse and a midwife by background. I just completed 25 years in the army where I've done all sorts of extraordinary things. Amazing experience. And I also I'm a teacher, a lecturer, and I've quite a lot of research as well. So I've had a whole pressure. Now I'm a qualified coach and an NLP practitioner, and I'm now passionate about supporting others to help them be the best they can be, to release their potential. So I've had a bit of from being a fully employed person for most of my life, I'm now entrepreneur, setting up my own business, and I'm really excited about it. I'm so lucky in the fact that I've really found my passion, and I just feel so blessed. I'm living my passion every day and it doesn't feel like work. So in that respect, it's been amazing. I think it's been a massive learning curve from being a business, from, being fully employed where you've got your money at the end of the month, you kind of directed what you've got to do and so forth, to suddenly having a clean slate. So it's a mixture of real excitement to, oh my goodness, it's all up to me now. So it's a big challenge, like most people, I think.
What was the driver, the motivator for you doing that?
I think I just wanted to do something for myself. I'd had an amazing career, and I think I just wanted to have that freedom and that flexibility of creating what I knew I could create. And actually, I've got two sides of it now. I'm also very passionate about supporting people with their nutrition and rebalancing their health and what they put on their body and in their body, which is sort of another part of the business, all to do with making people realise they can be the best they can be.
It's really interesting. Tell me about the sorts of clients that you have. How do they find you, or do you find them? And who are you working with at the moment? Obviously, I know you can't name names, but what types of people are you working with?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, actually. I do lots of networking, which has been amazing. Also from finding people to help with my business, but also, obviously to find clients as well. A lot of it, like always, is word of mouth, its reputation, which has been great. I think the people I know I can help. I've worked very much in the corporate world with businesses, from the executive team right down to the most junior member of that team. So I can communicate with all levels, which has been great. I think the people I know I have the greatest synergy with are senior individuals, senior executives, often mainly women, who actually find that they are outwardly, they appear to be hugely successful, but inwardly we all have that stuff that's like stopping us being the best we can be, where we don't realise we've got there by default, by luck. Well, there's no such thing as luck. You get there because you deserve it. So it's supporting them to realise that actually they are amazing people within, and they're not just putting it on. They have that, and relieving that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, there's so much written about that, isn't there, about imposter syndrome and people just feeling, I'm not worthy and I can't achieve what I really want to achieve, and how do I get past that that blockage. What sort of tools and techniques do you use, or could you offer any kind of simple advice now?
Yeah, exactly. I think this is what my my lifetime of experience, I've learned lots along the way, and I just really want to help others to short circuit it so they haven't got to wait as long as I've waited to do. So I think a lot of it is realising a lot of the stuff we deal with is other people's issues that we take upon ourselves. So I talk about things like the drama triangle, where we can so easily become like a victim, but actually often it's the person that we're communicating with is actually the victim, and they're perpetuating it on us. So once we realise actually that's not us to deal with, that's them to deal with, it can be hugely liberating, and then we can work out ways. But I teach all sorts of things like the 5-second rule, where it stops procrastination. So you're counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action, because that stops. Often what happens is our fear, flight and flight kicks in. And so we always know what we want to do. Often we know absolutely what we should be doing, but we don't. So if you take a bit of action first, then that fear, flight doesn't kick in, because we've actually taken the action before we've actually got that fear, fight and flight. So that's just one example of the tools I talk about.
Excellent. All right. At the end of this, we're going to be reminding everybody of how to contact you.
Yes.
If what you've been saying already resonates with them. And I imagine, those kind of situations that we find ourselves in are so common.
Yeah.
So you will be getting calls, I imagine.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
So let's turn the clock back then. Let's start from where you started. Where are you from? And, what were your best or your funniest, most memorable childhood reminiscences?
Yeah, interesting question. Where are you from? I'm 8th generation Army. So consequently, I don't really know where I'm from. Because I've lived all over the place. However, my father left the army when I was 7, and then we settled in Salisbury in Wiltshire. So that's kind of where I sort of feel I'm from.
Sure.
But I was born in Germany, went straight around the world as a baby. I think I travelled I had my first passport when I was 4 months old.
Amazing.
And there's a story of my mother putting a label in my coat when I was 2, where I was bundled on a plane to fly back home to Germany, where they were. I did have somebody with me, but it's just so I've been a bit of a nomad really all my life.
How has that impacted on you though? How have you coped with that? Was it completely natural and you just went with the flow, or did it affect you in any way?
Yeah, I think it's a real mixture, really. In some respects, it's great because I've got friends literally all over the world where I've met people. I've met the most inspiring people in my life. The downside of that, or not, I wouldn't say a downside, but is the fact that I don't have that stable friendship that where you see people, when you sort of watch the X Factor and they go home to their family, there's 500 people in the room welcoming them home, because everybody's all over the place. So I've never had the boy next door and the whole kind of community thing, but I've had it in different ways, because obviously the army provides you with a massive community. So I've had communities, but communities that are very mobile, shall we say.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so you being 8th generation army, then it was almost a given that you were going to go into the army. Was it expected of you, or did you just see that your father was in the army and the generations of the heritage was there, and you just thought, oh yeah, it's what I want to do?
No, it's really interesting. I didn't actually join the army till I was 31. So they never put any pressure on me to join the army, but I had seen the benefits of it and what was happening. I'd trained to be a midwife and a nurse in the NHS, worked for a while, went out to the Far East, worked in the Middle East and the Far East, did lots of travelling, and came back to UK and unfortunately all my experience I'd had abroad just didn't count for anything. So therefore I thought, how can I develop my career while being in a same health environment? And that's where the army really kicked in. It was amazing because you can progress your career while you're around abroad, because I love being abroad, so it just made sense.
Goodness me. So okay, let's turn it back. Nurse and a midwife. I mean, what was life like in those years that you were in that career? Where were you working then?
Yeah, this was an incredible eye opener for me. I did my training in Oxford and I moved up to London, and then I was a community midwife in Southwark, and I saw a whole different side of life I'd not seen before. Really challenging circumstances for some of my ladies. Really a real privilege to be part of that and to support them. And then I also worked in the Middle East, and that was another real extreme experience where obviously at the time I was working in Saudi just after the Gulf War, so where women obviously have had very limited environment to the one I was used to, where freedoms were much more restricted. So giving them a lot of support, and actually I think that's where probably my passion for empowering others maybe have started, though I didn't realise that at the time, of giving people a voice.
And did you have kind of learning experiences from working in those environments? You talk about Southwark and the mothers there who had challenges in just living and kind of getting by, right? And then ensuring that, you know, they gave birth to healthy babies. And the experience of Saudi. What did you learn from those environments, do you think?
I think I learned so much that we are responsibility for our future, but sometimes it takes a lot more challenge to overcome it. I think culture, again, I've always been fascinated by culture, and I think that really, I think, hit me home as a single woman at the time in Saudi, and the difference between a single woman and a single man in Saudi was really stark. Even though, you know, I was, as an expat, we were covered in black from head to toe. The guys could just walk around in their white t-shirts and shorts, and you know, it just gave me real insight of how different cultures are, really.
What was that like then to handle at that time?
I think there was a real it's a sort of like a real balance between acceptance that actually wherever you go in the world, of course you respect the culture you're in, and it's their culture, it's work for them, and we need to respect that, to actually kind of demonstrating there is a different way. So it's a real fine balance between, and I did a lot of support with the women, and actually ironically it went full circle, because one of my last jobs in the army was I was head of global head of nursing for a military organisation, and I was working with female nurses in Muslim countries. Just happened to be how it happened, but giving them a sense of empowerment by giving them skills and knowledge in order to give them a sense of power, so that actually they could challenge.
And did they do that? Did some of those women do that in the end, or
I think
did
it was
they feel
very
safe enough to do that?
Yeah, no, it was very interesting. They did challenge, but actually I think it helped them realise also that sometimes the grass isn't always greener as well, and I think you can have it, or you can't have both. And I think some of them made them realise actually maybe it wasn't such a bad deal. They kind of knew where they stood, which was really quite interesting. And in fact, when I was in Saudi, some of the women sort of almost felt really sorry for us as expats, because they felt, well, we had so much choice, where'd you go? Whereas their kind of life was set out for them, so they didn't have to make those big choices.
And that's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah,
because we might look at it and go, you're so restricted, but actually they didn't envy you for the amount of choice. That's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, really, that really surprised me.
And that in itself is a learning experience, isn't it? Because
absolutely.
We see things from one perspective, and actually what it's done is allowed you to kind of feel what it was like, or empathise on what it was like in another experience.
Yeah.
Wow.
So because they didn't have that option, there was no point in considering it.
Yeah,
so therefore, that they just sort of knew where not what their fate, that sounds a bit, but you know, their kind of future was, and therefore that's it.
In terms of working as a midwife, have you ever tried to put a number on the number of babies that you've helped bring into the world?
No, probably thousands. But I think my first 100 I recorded, and then I kind of like stopped at that point.
That's incredible, though.
Yeah,
wow.
I mean, in Saudi it was incredible. I could deliver like 12 babies a day, because they kind of they have lots of children very fast.
Wow, incredible. So incredible. And so that chapter of your life then, working in London and in Saudi, sort of how many years was that as a nurse and a midwife-ish?
Before I joined the army, so I qualified, it was about 10 years. 10 years, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And then the army, and boy,
Yes.
you've done some things and seen some
Yes.
you've had some frightening experiences at the army, haven't you? Let's talk about your time in the army then. Where did you start?
Well, I started, my first posting was in Germany, one of the military hospitals. That was great. Lots of social life, really great life. And that was just before the Balkans kicked off. It was just after the Gulf War where everything was like settled down again. And then, so I worked there, and then I went to Cyprus, which was just the most amazing, best climate in the world. It was just fantastic. We had so much fun. But, soldiers produce lots of babies, particularly when they come back from deployment. So we were very busy. So that was really rewarding. And I think what was great is because our staff ratios were so much better than the NHS, we could really give top quality care, which was really rewarding. And then all the military hospitals closed, so I came back to UK, met my husband on my first posting, which is not what I expected, but it was still 25 years later, we're still happily married.
But that's amazing, the unexpected meeting of minds that turns into, a quarter of a century of marriage. That's beautiful.
Yeah, so that was fantastic.
What does he do?
Oh, well, he was a biomedical scientist in the army.
Okay.
He was a bacteriologist. And then when he left the army, he retrained to be a personal trainer because he was always playing top quality hockey and so forth. That's
a real shift, isn't it?
And a hockey coach. So sport's always been his passion. So,
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So then you met your husband, and so what did you do? Where did you kind of move within? Because obviously with that many years service, you obviously did different roles in different places.
Yes.
So you did Germany, you did Cyprus, military hospitals closed.
Yeah, exactly. So Germany, that's when we met. I then, about 6 months into our relationship, I got posted to Cyprus. So he was in Germany, then he was in UK. So then we actually got engaged. We had 18 months of our engagement. We were in different countries. So but actually we had the most amazing holidays in between, which was really, really special. So actually I got married 3 days after I got posted back to UK. And then actually 2 days after our wedding, I got posted up to Edinburgh and he was down in Aldershot. So
oh my goodness.
but again, that was a bit of a weekend thing. But then in April, we actually got back together properly and had our first home together. And we were very lucky, we managed our career being in different places but within an hour of each other, so we could stay in the same house.
That is really
which sounds
fortunate.
quite odd, but actually so many military husbands and wives live in different areas of the country and just meet when they can. So we actually elected to choose maybe not the same high profile posts, but actually it was more important that we were together than it was to do the high profile.
Yeah, and you hear about the couples splitting up because of the distances that they have to endure whilst being in the army. So well done to you for sustaining that.
But then of course we had deployment as well, so we each of us would deploy at different times.
Sure.
So we were obviously separate during that time.
So tell me about what's the most exciting place you've been deployed to?
Depends how you mean exciting.
Well, how would you like to define it? Your call, Lizzie.
I think, I was in the Balkans, and that for me, that was an amazing experience because I went as a head of department, and that was a real privilege to support a whole team. That was a real privilege to kind of lead a team for that. When I was in Afghanistan, I was in the main headquarters, and that was a real privilege, seeing everything unfold between us.
How long were you there for?
That was only 4 months.
And what kind of year was that? Can you remember?
That was 2012.
Okay, so quite recently.
Yeah,
right.
And I think the most challenging thing of that was saying goodbye to my 10-year-old daughter, not knowing if I was going to see her again. But you just deal with it. It's great. I mean, you come back a better, stronger person.
Any frightening, chilling moments whilst you were there?
I think I think every deployment has its moments. Obviously I can't speak too much about that. But yes, I mean, every deployment the whole point, the reason you're there is because it's a challenging place, but we had loads of great training to support that. So
and you were a nurse at that time there?
Yes, yeah.
Looking after wounded and injured.
Yes. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I was humbled by the bravery of the guys out there. I mean, I was sitting in a headquarters. Okay, we were at risk and that kind of thing, but actually they were the guys. Just the courage was just phenomenal. Honestly, it was just so humbling.
And was that one of your kind of last deployments, or?
Yes. Well, I also had when I was supporting the nurses in the Muslim countries, but that was sort of a different sort of employment.
Gotcha. Any other army stories you want to share?
I think what was really, for my PhD, I explored the impact of military life on the families left behind, because I'd actually experienced all sides of it. So I'd been left behind with my 2-year-old daughter when my husband deployed, and I'd actually deployed leaving my husband with my daughter. So I'd sort of seen the whole gambit, and I think that's where I started realising, looking back, why I was so passionate about supporting military families and getting their stories heard was to give them a voice. And clearly, just after I finished my PhD, Gareth Malone did his amazing with the Military Wives Choir, which really did literally give them a voice.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And then I got involved with the Department of Health to really support military families so that actually weren't disadvantaged by the constant relocation.
Oh, terrific.
Yes.
So what was that, a one-off special project, or is that ongoing?
No, I think it's the Armed Forces Covenant, which is a covenant which businesses have upheld, so that actually, for example, if you move all the time, you might get to the bottom of the dentist waiting list or whatever. So it's to stop, so they're not disadvantaged just through relocation, really.
Superb.
Yeah.
And in the course of your research, because obviously PhD study is long and in depth, how many families did you speak to, in terms of finding out what their experiences were like?
I did qualitative research. I was looking great depth rather than quantitative, where you're looking more numbers. So I had 30 participants.
That's still a lot, right? Yeah, amazing.
So, but really, again, amazingly, real privilege to hear their stories.
And what sort of conclusions did you draw from that?
Well, I think that for my study, what was really interesting was I was exploring the impact of deployment. But what happened was, when their children were sick, and this has all been published, but when their children were sick, when their husband was around, and I won't tell you husband because generally that's what it was. It's not that, it's just that that's generally how it works in the army. Husband and wife, they tend to be married. They would, if their child was sick, they would call healthcare or go to the out-of-hours service or whatever as the very last resort. As soon as their husband was away, it was their first port of call. And so actually it really changed their decision making dramatically when their husband was there. The interesting impact of that is that if you're you could get whole groups like 400 families suddenly finding themselves single parents during that deployment, which of course potentially could have a massive impact on the local health service that's providing them, when suddenly you've got parents that are suddenly ringing them that normally they wouldn't. So it had quite severe implications. So it was really interesting. And I think also it was the first time anybody had actually explored the reality of, from their perspective, of what it's like being single for that length of time without any contact with your spouse.
That's really interesting. In that sense, your work is pioneering, and it almost feels like, why hadn't anybody done that before? When it feels kind of obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that that's much better even in the last 5-10 years. But there was always much more focus on quantitative research, looking at numbers opposed to the qualitative, the real experience.
Yeah, and ultimately, experience is what helps us understand to then try and formulate some solutions.
Exactly.
Yeah?
I certainly don't do numbers.
No, me neither.
Exactly. Don't do numbers.
I'm not interested in numbers at all. No. And I suppose, I was kind of digging deeper about your PhD because I'm considering, my own proposal. So that aside,
well, I can obviously, out of this interview, we can certainly have a chat with that.
Yes, we'll geek out on PhDs afterwards. So thank you for that. It's fascinating, really good work. And so it's published, so we can find that online if we search for you. And
if you look under my name.
Yes, it'll come up.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And so you've worked in many challenging arenas then, but away from kind of work, in terms of other areas of your personal life, any other challenges that you faced that you can kind of speak to around how you then overcame those?
Yeah, I think I had, interestingly, when I was a child, I was very overweight, and I was sort of bullied, although I didn't think I was really bullied, but I look back on it now. And I think actually I became a bit of a victim, and I totally accept that now. And so throughout my military career, there were times, well, not my military career, but throughout my whole career, there were times where I seemed to sort of come up against individuals that didn't make me feel great. But actually, I'm so glad all that happened, because now I realise no wonder I was completely pathetic and a victim. And now I can really support others, and just literally by talking about things like the tool I teach is the drama triangle, which is where we all take on roles of parent, adult, child. And often if you feel you're persecuted, it's actually that person that's persecuting you is because they've got their own issues, and actually they're the victim.
Yeah, and often that's really hard to, you can't even decipher that or figure that out when you're young, right? We see that when we're older. We can actually see in the other person, it's you that's deficient. But it's great to be able to help others see that's where the problem lies, right?
So often you find that even the individuals, I mean, I wasn't aware of it as an adult. It wasn't until I learned about all this stuff when I did my coaching course that all these light bulb moments went off. And I thought, oh my goodness. And it's the most liberating thing, because you realise, actually, that's them, it's not you. And that can really change people's lives when they realise, actually, you're great, you're fine, you're okay.
Yeah, and often it's someone is either jealous, it's either intense jealousy, or they just see it as a bit of fun for them, and it's kind of then, well, really you should look at your own life instead of bullying others, or
but when you're in
others.
It, you just think it's because you're the defected one.
Totally.
Yeah.
So in that sense, then, what sort of? So you went through the bullying as a child. How old were you? Kind of primary school age?
Yeah, it's kind of like 10, 11. I mean, looking back on it, it probably wasn't bullying. It was just, particularly girls can be quite vicious when they're young. And I think I'd been very protected as a child, and I think I just wasn't tough enough. And actually, it was really good I had it, because I don't regret any of it now. At the time, obviously, it doesn't feel great, but I think every experience we have, I totally believe in the philosophy that every challenge is a learning opportunity. So we can learn from everything, and that's all down to mindset. And that's what I support people to as well, is help them with a growth mindset that everything can be learned, opposed to a fixed mindset where you sort of get the why me sort of attitude.
I believe in that too, actually. I really, really do. I can't remember the exact words, but what looks like a setback is actually almost a setup to help you move forward.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Even though it might sound a bit corny, it might sound really cheesy. You might go, "Oh, what? What does she mean?"
Yeah, it's so true. So true. So true. And how many times we have some adversity in our life where we felt that was not our plan, and then you look back on it and you think, "Oh, thank goodness that happened."
Yeah. Wow. Relief. I'm so glad I didn't do that.
Thank goodness that happened in retrospect.
Yeah. I'm so glad that failed, because actually now this is the direction I need to go in.
Yeah, exactly.
Life is weird, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And in terms of what you've been through over the years, Lizzie, is there any kind of general advice you can give to people? Because look where we are. I've heard about your amazing story, working as a nurse and a midwife here and abroad, and in some really frightening, challenging circumstances in war-torn areas. Then you tell us about, your academic career. You've gone into research. You've really challenged your mind in a very different way. Now you're running your own business. I mean, there are all sorts of different points here that people can tap into and go, I'd really like to do that. I'd really like to change career. I'd really like to set up my own business. I'd really like to try some kind of academic course of study. any kind of tips, hints and advice that you could offer to someone who feels a bit stuck, wants to move,
follow your
not
dream.
Sure how?
Absolutely follow your dream. And that's what I also help people with. Help people work out their why. What do they want their legacy to be? And I think, when we're a child and we're 3 and 4 and we want to be a fairy or an astronaut, we have no problem saying what we want to be.
I love it.
But suddenly you go to school and it's, oh no, you're going to be a nurse, a solicitor, a doctor, what are you going to do? And we get not so much now. I think teenagers now have far more opportunity, and some will never ever have a job interview because they'll just set up their own business. But I think what my biggest tip to everybody is absolutely follow your dream, because if you're following your dream, you are your true self. It doesn't feel like work, as I'm discovering now. And I think, we all, I strongly believe everybody has a purpose. And so many, unfortunately, never find that purpose, and they spend on the rat race, on the hamster wheel, just because they need to pay the mortgage or whatever they need to do. But actually, when you work out why do you need to pay the mortgage, then you can find your real purpose. It might be, and in my workshops, I ask them to say why 5 times, and then you might find, actually, it's because I want to provide my family with a place of safety to live. That's far more powerful than paying the rent. So all I would say to any tip is that actually, if you have a dream, follow it. Because it is, and you think, Richard Branson's my hero. Who would have said, oh, barking mad? Well, I think I'll just put people on Mars. And he's making it happen because he has a dream. And if you have a dream and you believe in it strongly enough, and you should look at it every day. And I have it on my phone, my little dream boards on my mobile phone. I think you can't go wrong because you are being who you really are.
And you've got to get to that root of why does this dream matter to me? What is it that drives me about this? Because that's the why, isn't it, that you're talking about? And that other people call, your purpose. What's your purpose? What are you driven by? And that is fantastic advice. Absolutely right. I agree with it. And, I also think sometimes people have their why, and then they might feel, oh, maybe it's not. I've been trying this path and maybe it's not. Don't worry, there probably is another why. You just got to keep digging.
Well, as long as it's the correct why. Often you originally think your why is your why, and then you realise actually it's not your why at all. Yeah. There's a far deeper why that you're just exploring.
And you got to step into that, haven't you?
Absolutely.
Stay brave and kind of move to try and get to that deeper why. Without a doubt.
And I think, sometimes it can be challenging in the fact that people might try and stop it, but often the people that try and stop it is because actually they haven't got their own. They haven't got their own, and actually they're trying to, not say bring you down to their level, that sounds really bad, but, it's amazing. But actually by having your own why, your own passion, you bring people along with you.
So agree with that, Lizzie. Oh, that's why you do what you do so well.
I'm just passionate about letting people become who they really are meant to be. We spend too much time with those jackets on us, trying to conform us to be false who labels. We think other people want us to be, opposed to who we want to be.
Totally, it's not a way to live life.
Get rid of their straight jackets.
I love it.
Yeah.
And in terms of the future for your business, what are you thinking? Because obviously it's a year in now. I know that's early. But have you got any thoughts you can share around kind of short, medium or long-term goals as to where you see the future for your business?
Yeah. I was very lucky. I did lots of public speaking. I went around the world when I was in the army with conferences. I just want to spread the word, really. So my passion is to deliver far more workshops and inspirational talks at conferences around the world to spread the words. But I have published a bit, but I really want to write my own book, which will be a toolbox for well-being. So I've got a massive amount to do. I just hope I've got a long time to do it because I've got so much I want to achieve. I just feel I'm just getting started.
Wow, Lizzie's energy is amazing. I was literally bouncing off the walls the whole time we sat together for this one. I know you'll agree with me that she has so much more to give, and make sure you find her on LinkedIn and at her website rypotential.co.uk. And before you go, will you do me a favour? Will you share this podcast with your friends and family? We're now on Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts and YouTube. So please leave us a review there. And you can also come and say hello on the hashtag FabWomanPodcast on social media. We are at FabWomanPodcast on Twitter and at Fabulous Woman Podcast on Instagram. Thanks a lot for listening. Make sure you come back for another, won't you? The Fabulous Woman Podcast is a Raging Brum production.